From cart open dates to pricing, anytime you launch a new product or program, it feels like there are a million decisions that need to be made. There are five really important decisions that you definitely need to hone in on to make the most of your launch. Let's get into it in this episode.
Being an online business owner is full of ups and downs. Some days you can't imagine going back to your 9 to 5, and other days you want to burn your whole business to the ground. We get it.
Welcome to Chaos to Conversions, a podcast of practical, no BS strategies to grow your online business. Each week, we're chatting about launching, copywriting, mindset, and more, so you can make sense of the chaos and do more of what works.
Join the conversation and let's grow together.
Hi, and welcome back to Chaos to Conversions. We are here for episode 30, talking all about launch decisions. Every time you have a new promotion or product or membership, anytime that you're doing a really concrete kind of push, but honestly, you can apply these decisions anytime you're promoting anything in general in your business. It does not have to be brand new. And one of the things that I hear from my clients more than anything is how much decision fatigue they have when they are trying to launch. Because, I mean, let's be real, you are definitely making a million decisions between like, when are you going to promote it? How long should it be? What should the price be? There's so many decisions that need to be made. So let's just try and focus on the really important ones. Okay, so the first decision that you need to really think about when you are promoting a program, whether that's a course, a membership, or even a digital product, you want to kind of start to think about how are you going to make sure you're attracting the right type of people to your audience. So you'll need to think about what type of freebie will you pick. Now, I'm using the term freebie like really, really broadly. And to be clear, you don't have to create an entirely new freebie every time you launch something. Chances are you might have something that already is kind of working for you. So don't feel like compelled every time you promote or launch something to completely start from scratch. But we should have some type of free kind of carrot dangling that can get people, and more importantly, like the right people into your world and attracted to the type of content. So we want to make sure that we are like really choosing what we are promoting and talking about to attract the right audience strategically. There are a million different types of freebies that you can create or that you might already have created, but the size and quality, more importantly, honestly, the quality of your list is going to directly impact your launch. I have worked with clients that have had over 120,000 people on their email list, and I've worked with clients that have had as little as 2,000 people on their email list. Myself, actually, at the time of recording this episode, I'm hovering somewhere, I think, between 13 and 1,400 people on my email list. And I'll just be real here for a second. A lot of those people are from like freebie bundles or free trainings that I've done. I would not honestly, at the moment that I am recording this in August, I wouldn't necessarily rate the quality of my email list as super, super healthy. And that's something, it's a goal of mine. But before I go off too much on a tangent, which is not what this episode's about, you just want to make sure that you are strategically attracting people who are not, just freebie seekers, but people who are interested in the type of content that you are providing. And maybe I shouldn't bash myself too much because it has been a while since I've launched anything, and my email list has grown pretty substantially over the last 4 months. And I haven't had a huge launch since I've been working on growing my email list. So I guess we'll see what happens. But nevertheless, quality of your email list is way important over quantity. So you might have some different freebies in mind. Some examples, of course, might be something like a free audio course, templates, swipe files. You might be offering a free training, a free like pre-recorded or live training, a free challenge, anything that is just going to align very closely to with what your product or your program that you're eventually going to be launching is. So things that can really kind of make a good freebie, you want to make sure no matter like what format you are delivering it in, is that you want to make sure that you are talking to your ideal client's goal. And you want to make sure that you're speaking to like their end goal, which is why market research, if you go all the way back to episode 4, is so important. You need to definitely know what it is that your audience wants long term. So you don't want to be talking about the stepping stones to get to the ideal goal, which is probably what your freebie is. You want to be talking about what your ideal clients actually want from you in their business and their lives at the end. So you want to make sure that there is some sort of tangible result that after downloading this freebie, they will be able to know how to do X, Y, or Z, or they'll be starting to think about how to do X, Y, or Z. So, for example, if we're talking about, and I've used this example before in the past, but if we're talking about a client, let's say, using myself, who wants to have a $50,000 launch, I might put out a freebie. I don't have one, but I might put out a freebie that is all about building your email list, for example. But when I talk and promote my freebie on social media to my current email list, when I collaborate with others, I won't be focusing on the steps of how to build your email list when I promote that freebie. I would instead be talking about the client's end goal where they might want to have a $50,000 launch. I know that one of the steps to take there to get there is going to be, like I mentioned earlier, dependent on the quality of your email list. So if my freebie is all about building a quality email list with the desire to eventually get clients larger results that they want, I'll be talking about the results and not the stepping stones of building your actual email list. But if we're looking at actual concrete steps and things to, kind of check off about what makes a good freebie, here are some things that you want to make sure your freebie is doing. So if you want to grab a little scrap of paper or open up a note in your phone app, now would be a good time. So we want to make sure that our freebie is converting well. So that means for every 100 views, for example, we would want to see at least 30 people saying yes and joining and downloading that freebie. Anything less than that, and you might want to look at the copy on your landing page or the copy that your audience is reading before they say yes or no to the freebie. If your conversion is lower than 30%, I would definitely rework it before you consider doing something like running ads, for example. Other things that you want to make sure that you have going for you when you are promoting a freebie is you, of course, want to have a confirmation email that people are getting as soon as they download it. And you also want to make sure that people are funneling themselves into a welcome sequence afterwards. BRANDA actually has a freebie all about building lead magnets. I will leave the link for everybody in the show notes because, like I said, I don't have a freebie about that, but my good friend BRANDA does. So I will leave that link for everybody in the show notes if you are struggling with building a quality freebie. So anyway, make sure that you have a confirmation email going out. And then don't make the same mistake that I made once. Make sure that you have a welcome sequence behind it. Something else, kind of just a little tick mark to think about, is make sure you are looking at your landing page for your freebie, no matter what it is, whether it's a checklist or a free training or anything in between. Make sure you're looking at it on the mobile view as well. And you definitely really want to have an opt-in button above the fold. So that means that people aren't having to scroll. So if you're talking about it on Instagram, for example, people can just click the link in your story and they will very clearly immediately see a button to sign up for it without having to scroll and kind of look for themselves. So a quality freebie and what you're going to be promoting that will be aligned with your offer is definitely something you want to think about when you're making those kind of launch decisions. The other bits that you want to think about are when the heck am I going to promote this thing, whatever this thing is, whether it's a digital product or a membership or a course. You will need to, especially if you're having a specific cart open and close date, you will need to decide those dates. So you'll need to pick, I like to work backwards. So I would pick when you want the program to start or when you want the delivery of the product to begin. I would focus on that date first, then work backwards. And that will be your cart open period. There's a lot of variation in cart open periods these days. If you're doing something that you've maybe promoted before and you're just having like a smaller kind of flash sale or promotion period, you might do something as little as 48 hours. If you're doing kind of a larger launch, usually I recommend anywhere between 5 to 10 days. It just kind of depends on a lot of things, but like your energy, how many emails you're thinking of writing, what the program is itself. Are you doing any kind of live component, before that? There's not really a magic. I mean, I guess some people might say that the optimal cart open period is exactly 7 days. I don't think you can really say that. I think it depends on your audience, but generally the sweet spot is somewhere between 5 to 7 days. I do like to hover around a week or so, 6 or 7 days. 10 days feels really long to me. Although I did do a launch this summer where the cart open period, against my advice, I will say that, but it worked out. But the cart open period was actually more like 17 days because this particular CEO just really wanted people to feel like, and it was during the summer, which is not always, depending on your audience, not the best time to launch, but she really didn't want people to feel pressured. She really wanted people to have time to ask her questions and make a decision. So it worked out. Her launch went great. So I think there are definitely outliers and exceptions to every rule. If you're launching something, for example, I've done some combination in person seminars, like not me personally, but for a client, some in person seminars. And some people traveled across the country to go to these. So you couldn't, of course, do a 7 day cart open period and expect people to, book their flights and travel across the country in 7 days. So use your best judgment with your offer, your audience. Remember, you know your audience best. So make decisions based on that. And then once we have our cart open period determined, you'll want to think about the promotion period. Ideally, you want to have at least 2 to 3 weeks before your cart open period to be really talking about your offer. If possible, that's like minimum. If possible, it would be great to be putting out content and emails and social media things related to your offer up to 12 weeks before. But not to get overwhelmed here, if this is your very first launch, you do not have to and should not be trying to do all of these things kind of at once at full capacity. That is the beauty, I think, at least, about launching, is once you can get into the mindset that every launch is a test, you can build on your foundation and make it better each and every time. Like maybe you were working on creating your product and your sales page and you just really didn't get to the promotion that you wanted to for your first launch. You only mentioned it maybe 5 to 7 days before. Well, that's okay. Next time you launch, you'll hopefully already have your sales page mostly created and all of your other assets, at least foundationally speaking, so you can focus on the promotion part longer. So don't get hung up on, oh, well, if I can't promote for, 3 full months before or tease my audience with this curated social media strategy for 3 full months before, I shouldn't even bother. Just try and think of it as building blocks. And the more you do it, the better you'll be and the better it'll get. So after we've decided kind of about our launch dates, when we've looked at a calendar and we've put on our promotional period and when we're going to be selling and when we're either going to close the cart or maybe you have some kind of other urgency bonus going on or like a coupon or an extra bonus that'll fall away, we do generally need to create some sense of urgency. After you have all of those dates kind of decided, you need to make sure this part's kind of boring, but it is often overlooked. Sometimes I've seen by clients in the past. You want to make sure you have all of the tech stuff that you need. So you'll, of course, need a way to collect money. You might already have that. That might be a no-brainer. Maybe you already have, Kajabi or Teachable, or you know that you've been collecting money through like something like Flowdesk or ConvertKit in your email, that's great, but just make sure that people have a way that they can pay you. Some kind of sales page or informational bit. Now, you don't, again, going back to the whole idea of building blocks, you don't necessarily need a professionally designed sales page for every single product and every single program you have. You can improve it every time. But generally speaking, people will want to have some sort of something to look at, whether that is a simple sales page on a landing page in an email provider, or whether it's a built out beautifully designed sales page. Or I personally haven't worked with anyone who's done this, but I've heard lots of success stories about people selling things honestly with a Google Doc. And people have appreciated kind of just like the straightforward, no fluff, informational, piece of it. So whether you have a full sales page or a Google Doc or something in between, some sort of information where people can see what your product or your program's about. And then, of course, if you are hosting anything live, which you might not be doing, but if you're hosting anything live, you would need to decide if you wanted to try and do that through Zoom or StreamYard or Demio or one of the other webinar hosting platforms. Or if you're hosting a live challenge or even a pre-recorded challenge, do you need, a Facebook group or a circle group or anything like that? So just kind of thinking through the tech stack piece so you're not, for example, about to like launch and you're like, I don't have a way for these people to pay. And then you're scrambling to get your payment processor integrated with your website or your email marketing software. And then the last kind of, I'll call this the cherry on top of the other sort of nuts and bolts of the launch decisions is, are you going to attempt to increase that cart value by doing anything like an upsell or a cross sell if you have other products? Is there anything like that that you are going to try and do? So, an upsell, for example, is something that is not necessary for your audience to have to complete whatever goal or transformation you're promising them, but it's maybe a nice to have. It's maybe a little something extra that would get them there faster. Could be a one on one something with you, could be something like an extra set of templates or another product that pairs really, really nicely. I'm not going to go too much into that in this particular episode, but if you head back to episode 24, which I think is called Launch Math, I go into a really deep dive about different ways that I have helped to increase a client's overall cart value with things like upsells, downsells, tripwires, all sorts of other kind of bells and whistles that, again, you can add on later, especially if this is like your first launch. But let's say, for example, this is a product or a program you've launched 3 or 4 times, and now you're kind of looking to refine, or let's be honest, make a little bit more money. Start to think about some of those upsells that you can add on to your main product that would really enhance your audience's experience. Think about what is a downsell that maybe you could offer people who participated in your live event, but they didn't ultimately end up buying your product or joining your program. What's something smaller that you could entice them to kind of come through the buyer's door, and then maybe later on they will eventually purchase from you? The last thing that we need to think about, and I saved the best, or I should say what most people consider to be the worst for last, would be the price. So this might be an optional bit if you have already decided on the price of your offer. But even if you have decided on your price, I would still listen to this part because you can always change the price and you can always do things like introduce a payment plan if you have a higher ticket offer, or break your payment plan up from 3 payments to 6 payments, for example, if you feel like people truly are saying that the price of the investment is really what's holding them back. So, couple things to play with, but pricing really depends on so much. It depends on what is the problem, what is the transformation that your product or your program is offering. is it super timely? Like, are you, and this is just something for you to think about, have you experimented with launching this particular, whatever you're launching, at different times during the year? Because that can sometimes really, really influence the way that your launch goes, depending on what your product is and depending on who your audience is. So, if you haven't experimented, especially if you feel like your offer is not really time sensitive, like I know a large part of people listening to this are probably either in the classroom or have been in the classroom, or their audience might be teachers. So it makes sense to launch in during the summer. But if that's not your audience, or if you have another product, even if you are in the teacher space, if you have another product that can really be used like all year round, mess with the timing on that and just pay really, really close attention to the results. So pricing is very subjective. Like there is no way for you to name a price on your product and feel like, oh yeah, that's 100% it. I mean, you might feel that way, but pricing is super subjective. And you're always going to have someone who is saying, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. I would never pay for that. And you're always going to have somebody with the same price be like, oh my gosh, it's so cheap. You should charge more. I love this. Pricing is subjective. So pick a price that depends on your niche, of course, the time of the year, how deep is the pain point or the transformation that you're offering. And then I really want you to also think about reverse engineering to try and meet your launch goals. And I go into this way more in episode 24, but you'll need to set some realistic expectations for yourself, like looking at the size of your email list and also the quality of your email list to determine if the price is realistic or if maybe you need to nudge it down or nudge it up. A rule of thumb I also like to say, especially if you are launching something, a product or a program or membership for the first time, personally, I would usually lowball it a little bit because it's way easier to increase your price as you refine your offer and get testimonials and social proof and feedback than it would be to price it too high. And then you're disappointed in the results and feel like maybe you need to lower the price, but you already had a handful of people join. So that kind of feels icky, right? So that's kind of my rule of thumb as well. I generally like to start a little bit lower and also tell my clients to start a little bit lower, especially if it's a first launch, because we can always increase the price. It is much harder, in my opinion, to decrease it. There are so many decisions to make when you launch anything. I know it can be super overwhelming. Focus on choosing a freebie that will provide your audience with a ton of value. Get your dates added to the calendar, make a list of all the tech you need, and set your price. Need help with any of these decisions, or if you're not sure where to start? Create a Workshop That Converts is open for enrollment. Let's test your offer with a paid online workshop. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and enroll.
Thanks so much for stopping by to hang out with me today. If you want to learn more about how we can work together on a launch strategy or grab a freebie or one of the resources I mentioned, head over to duxburydigital.co/resources. I'll be back here next Tuesday for more practical strategies to take your business from chaos to conversions.